Science. Sorry.
Oh, good afternoon. Let me welcome all of you here. You all seem to have arrived at once, and I'm sure there was a bit of a clog downstairs checking in, but we appreciate your getting settled. I'm Sam Wells, the Associate Director of the Center and also Director of West European Studies. And with my colleagues in our Middle East program and the Southeast Europe project, we're very pleased to sponsor this meeting today with an admittedly somewhat provocative title of Making Turkey Safe for Democracy, ? And it's meant to convey both safer democracy within Turkey and in the context of the accession negotiations with the European Union, because those are the two components that we will examine today. We're very pleased that Professor Hakan Yavuz would join us from the University of Utah. He's been traversing the country, accumulating frequent flyer miles, but we're glad he came back to us to make this presentation today. As many of you know, Professor Yavuz is known as one of the top experts on political Islam generally and in Turkey in particular. He has a volume that's, I think, in the third edition, Islamic Political Identity in Turkey. He's written with our colleague at Georgetown, John Esposito, a volume on Turkish Islam and the secular state. And he has another volume on the emergence of a new Turkey democracy and the AK party. He's carried out extensive field work in the Fergana Valley in Uzbekistan to examine the relationship between Islam and nationalism and the preservation and dissemination of Islamic knowledge under socialism. He has written in a wide variety of periodicals. He's on the editorial board of Critique, Silk Road, and the Journal of Muslim Minority Affairs. He will address the Turkish constitutional issues as they are evolving. Looking more from the European Union perspective is our current public policy scholar, Mario Zucconi, who is a senior fellow at the Italian Social Sciences Council in Rome and a regular visiting professor at the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at Princeton. Professor Zucconi's research focuses on transatlantic relations, international politics of the Balkans, and European relations with Russia, Turkey, and the developing world. He has written extensively on these issues and, as I indicated, has taught at Princeton regularly since 1987. We're very pleased to have these two scholars. We will have each of them speak for about 25 minutes, and then we will open for what I'm sure will be a good discussion. Professor Yavuz.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks again. What I would like to do today to understand what is going on in Turkey, we need to know something about what does state mean in Turkish context. And then I want to spend a little bit time on Turkish Islam to provide a context of contemporary political debate. Turkey, somewhat different than I would say most of the Muslim countries, has a different and I would say deeper notion of state. It is somewhat, in Europe, it is similar to Germany, I would say. There is a powerful notion of state. In the Turkish political thought, again, the state existed and exists prior to any constitutional order. In other words, in Turkey, in the political thought, state exists before the constitution and constitutional debate, and this it exists prior to constitutional order. This prior is very much construed in terms of historical and existential, that there is a state, and state very much regulates the rights and duties. This is something very deep in the Turkish political culture. The second, the state in Turkey is defined by its distance from society. Society very much defined in terms of non-political world, primarily concerned with material and private issues and needs. That the state above society. This is the second characteristics of what we mean state in Turkey. The third, I would say, the state in the Turkish context, this concept of state excludes political parties. Parties express the diversity of society. They cannot form the part of the state. The state gives some space to political parties to regulate the diversity within society, but the social diversity cannot express itself at the state level. So this is something has to be there, that this notion of state, and this notion of state, I would say somewhat consolidated by Kemalism or Kemalist tradition in terms of secularism and nation state. So we are dealing here a political culture which is deeply rooted the notion of state, that it is above society, and the religious, ethnic, ideological diversity cannot punctuate or shape the functioning of the state. Okay, this is something needs to be there. Second, the second concept we need to unpack in order to understand what is going on in Turkey is something called Turkish Islam. Islam is a universal message, it is a universal religion, but Islam, I would say, took 7 different contextualization. These 7 different contextualization I call sometimes the zones of Islam, but I want to focus on the Turkish Islam, that the Turkish Islam has its own characteristics. One of the main characteristics of the Turkish Islam is Sufism, that the Turkish Islam is somewhat more punctuated by Sufism, and Sufi mystical Islam very much focuses on inner aspect or ethical aspect of Islam more than the external dimension. The second aspect of Turkish Islam is that it is also a contested zone between orthodoxy and heterodoxy, something that Islam in Turkey has never been fully settled, normalized. You have mystical orders, the Sufi orders, such as the Alevi, Bektashi, and then you have also Orthodox Islam, and it has always been contested. The third, because Islam in Turkey is a frontier Islam, because of the Ottoman reality, and it was a frontier condition of need for security, very much consolidated the notion of state in the Turkish political culture. The state, the notion of state, very much the outcome of this frontier condition in Turkey. Another contemporary aspect of Turkish Islam very much shaped by lack of oil. In Turkey there is no oil. This is not a rentier economy. This is a tax-based economy. And there is a close connection between taxation and representation in the Turkish context. It is not like Iran or Saudi Arabia. You have here a bourgeoisie, a powerful civil society. This is a tax-based economy, and Turkey in that sense is similar to Malaysia, but it is very different than Saudi or the Iranian case. Another factor, I would say, in the Turkish Islam, that the Turkey has never been colonized. Turkey is one of the few Muslim countries which was not colonized, and so the Turks are somewhat more relaxed and comfortable with interaction with Europe or outside. Another aspect of Turkey today, the contemporary debate of Turkish politics, is very much, I would say, this division between secular and Islamic groups, and this division again has some historical roots, and we need to pay little attention to these historical roots. When Ottoman Empire was collapsing, it tried to modernize itself. The first institution in the Ottoman Empire which modernized itself was the military. So almost all modernization project in the Turkish Ottoman context carried out by the military because it was the most modern institution. So it was the military which led the reform project, and main opposition to modernization project came from the ulama and religious groups and religious sector of the society. Therefore, in the 19th century, the religious reaction very much framed as oppositional identity to modernization project of Tanzimat, later on in the Kemalist period. So what we have to conclude so far, the modernization project carried out by the military, and the reaction to reforms came from Islamic groups, and Islam became an oppositional identity to modernization project of the late Ottoman Empire and modern Turkish Republic. In that sense, Islam as a source of identity, and it also became an alternative imagination of society and polity. Islam is not necessarily a religion in the Turkish context. It also became an alternative project to criticize Turkish version of modernity. So this historical roots of the division very much, I would say, rooted in the Kemalist project. The second major division in the Turkish society took place with the multi-party system. Turkey became a multi-party system in 1950s as a result of internal and external pressure, and this multi-party system in 1950s created a division, and again opposition to Kemalist reforms are framed in the Islamic language, and then the establishment, the state, tried to protect itself from the division in the society by creating the Constitutional Court. Turkish Constitutional Court was created with the 1961 Constitution with the specific mission. The mission of the Constitutional Court, still under the 1982 Constitution, is to protect the founding philosophy of the Turkish Republic, i.e. to protect nation state and secularism in Turkey. So whoever becomes a judge in the Turkish Supreme Court, that judge has to act under this mission given by the Constitutional Court, that to protect the state from the internal division of society, not to penetrate the state or to protect the state from Islamization or from ethnic politics as well. This was the main attempt of the 1960 Constitution to protect the state from the society. Another turning point in the Turkish history is 1980s. 1980s, with the Özalian or Özal reforms, neoliberal economic policies, here Islam changes. What you have in 1980 neoliberal economic policies, it changed the meaning of Islam, meaning of God, and it made possible for large sector of Muslim society in Turkey to imagine modernization with Islam, not without Islam. The difference between Özal's era of modernization and Kemalist era of modernization, in the Özal period it was modernization with Islam, whereas in the Kemalist period it was a modernization without Islam. The Özal period is very critical because it enhanced the civil society. It also tried to reverse the orientation that the state exists for society, not the other way around. And the Islamic movements also in the Özalian period, what we see is that the pro-EU and anti-EU divisions start to emerge, and Özal also enhanced the municipalities, and the municipal transformation actually provided a route for Justice and Development Party. Justice and Development Party, I would say the roots are in the municipal transformation of Turkey. Now, Justice and Development Party is an outcome of another legal engineering of the Constitutional Court. It was the Constitutional Court which banned Refah and Virtue Party and created a political opportunity space for younger generations such as Tayyip Erdogan and Abdullah Gül. And the Justice and Development Party doesn't have an identity or an ideology. It is a coalition of forces. This coalition consists of some Muslim Islamic groups, the Kurds in the southeast Anatolia, new urban dwellers, and Anatolian bourgeoisie. These are the four actors of Justice and Development Party in Turkey. They came together with two specific goals. Number one was more democracy. Number two was stability in the market. The market and more rights and liberties were the two main goals brought this population together. Is Justice and Development Party an Islamic party? My answer is no. It is not an Islamic party because the new forces, actors emerged out of Özal's neoliberal economic policies, such as Anatolian bourgeoisie. They have a different imagination of Europe. They want to join the European Union. They want larger market. Second, they believe that the European legal system would provide a much better legal protection for the rights and liberties in the country. Another factor, the Turkish civil society today is much thicker. And there is a secular sector in Turkey, that the secular sector of the society doesn't want to see Islamization of the country. Another factor, legally it is impossible for Justice and Development Party to frame itself in Islamic. I would say that it is not Islamic party. Is it a secular party? No, it is not secular party either, the way in which we understand secularism in Turkey. It is not secular because the discourse of the Justice and Development Party still very much shaped by Islamic terminology. It promotes Islamically sensitive lifestyle. It doesn't promote any leftist or anyone who openly drinks to the high positions. And the wife and the gender issue again separates Justice and Development Party from secular parties in the country as well. It is not secular either. So this is a party really without identity. But when we look at the policies of this party, what we see, it defines itself as a conservative Democrat party. It accepts the European project of modernization. It is very much in favor of neoliberal policies of Kemal Dervish. Again, this party doesn't have its own economic project as well. So far, it implements the policies of Kemal Dervish. And it is in favor of decentralization. And the main characteristics of this party is that it sees market as a model for politics, religion, and society. This is a rugged form of capitalism, what you have in Turkey, that the Prime Minister himself, he says, the market is a solution to Kurdish problem, health problem, education problem. So market becomes not Islam, not the first period of the Prophet Muhammad, but rather the market becomes a solution to all the problems of the country. I would argue the following. This is a conservative party. Turkey is today more Islamic than 5 years ago. But this Islamism of Turkey is today, what you find in the public sphere, in the public domain, is a conservative Islam. I call it Islam without Islam. In other words, this is İslamsızlaşma. Islam without Islam means that Islam void of its social and ethical core, but it is reduced to ritual activity and symbols, headscarf, ritual activities, but that ethical core is not there anymore. In other words, what we are seeing in the long term is the death of God in Turkey, that the rationality of market prevails over any religious group or the movement. The best example is the Gülen community, I would say. From my perspective, it constitutes a Protestant Islam. And right now it is visible, yes, but eventually the logic of market is going to prevail over the logic of God. So yes, at the surface we see more Islamic symbols and Islamic language, but I would say the dynamism, the deep root of Turkey indicates that we are going to see more secular in the long term, more secular country. And the worst thing what happened here is a number of mistakes also Justice and Development Party made, and these mistakes very much created a real or imagined fear of the secular establishment and secular society to mobilize the legal court, the Supreme Court, against the party. The mistakes includes, I would say, the election of Abdullah Gül as president. Another mistake was the Islamization of Turkish education system, Islamization of Turkish police force. Again, what we are seeing is happening. The question of the headscarf and the banning of alcohol at the municipal level. All these created a base of fear on the part of secular society and secular establishment to exercise the lost veto power. The state in Turkey tried to protect itself against society through National Security Council. National Security Council became ineffective as a result of European Union project. Second veto power was the presidency to protect the state from the pluralism of the society. The presidency very much now controlled by Justice and Development Party. The only lost institution now in the hand of the secular establishment is the Constitutional Court. So Turkey is a divided society. In the divided societies, you need a different mode of governance, something like constitutional democracy. You need to provide a veto power to minority. Whereas right now, the Prime Minister's notion of democracy is very much a majoritarian democracy. I think what we are seeing today, that the Constitutional Court in Turkey is independent but not impartial. As we said, because in the 1961 Constitution and 82 Constitution, the mission of the Constitutional Court is to protect secularism and nation state and founding philosophy of the republic. What I see that the Constitutional Court is more likely to ban the party, but it will not end the process of consolidation of civil society in Turkey. I think what we have issue of this notion of state in Turkey, which is so deep in the Turkish political culture, and the democracy do not always go together. What we need to see as some kind of consensus will evolve out of this contestation in Turkey. Again, what Turkey has achieved last 50, 60 years, I would say, incredible success story, given how the Europeans try to overcome and create a secular society as a result of 200-300 years long bloody conflict. And Turkey is trying to navigate this process through using sometimes military, sometimes the Constitutional Court, but I think in each attempt further consolidated Turkish society. And I am hopeful that the Turkey will muddle through this conflict, and then we will see more compromise between state and society within, I would say, a few decades.
The long term. Well, thank you very much. That, for those of you who have read Professor Yavuz's work, will appreciate that this short presentation compresses 2 books and half a dozen articles in a very masterly way, if I do say so. Mario.
Thanks. Let me come into this from the perspective of an international relations person. And let me state right away that I am very worried about the present crisis, because I consider this to be a much more delicate, much more worrisome crisis than, for instance, what happened a year ago with the pronunciamiento, with the warning that came from the armed forces in April of 2007. While is this more delicate? Because as constitutional lawyer from Ankara University said recently, military interventions in civilian affairs are irregular, while in this case it is an intervention by the judiciary which is regular. That means it's within the rule of law. Yes or not? Legislation for banning political parties is slightly reformed under the AKP government. Is not certainly the most progressive piece of Turkish legislation. And the point is that in 10 cases of parties banned that were brought before the European Court of Human Rights, the European Court of Human Rights, ruled 9 times against Turkey. Okay, 9 times out of 10. And Turkey accepts the jurisdiction, of course, of the European Court of Human Rights. So it's part of Turkish legal system. Then politically, let's leave the formality aside. Politically, it's very, very damaging because in my view, if there is a major problem today in a flourishing society, economy, in a pivotal state in the international community, which is Turkey, it is the division which has the gap, which is widening within the Turkish society between what, at least on the secularist side, is seen as a divide between secularism and Islamism. We don't need that. I mean, we need to find a solution and to narrow the gap, if anything. Let me come to this structure, the polarized politics that we see today in Turkey. On one side, we have a secularist camp that still maintains, I would say, a sense of entitlement over the government of the Republic, and maintains that this sense of entitlement can overrule democratic process, okay, because of what Hakan will say, the concept of the state in Turkey. Especially if, as they claim in this moment, you have a threatening Islamic tide coming in this moment. On the other side, there are the voters of the AKP party that there were almost 1 out of 2 in the last elections, less than a year ago, in July 2007, and they claim that they can rule based on democratic procedure. And of course, you have the problem of majoritarian democracy, and that is, I very much agree that this is one main problem, how to approach this problem. I tend to see more than the beginning of this division between secularism and Islamism, of this polarization I tend to read that the situation is growing much more in the early 90s and the mid-90s, and means with what is called identity politics, because in my view, when the system was open to multi-party system, is actually somebody like Menderes, he went for the periphery more than for the religion. In other words, the periphery, he went there and bringing roads, water, whatever was needed in the villages. And I would remind you that actually there were 2 parties that ran for elections in 46 and in 50s, specifically with a religious banner, and they didn't fare very well. And while the Democratic Party in that case was very successful. Now, let's go back to the problem that Hakan very well pointed out of this problem. I mean, how much we are relying on procedural democracy, I would call majoritarian democracy, is that if you have 50%, is that enough? The great experience of Italian Communist Party after Chile in '73 was the idea of historical compromise. That 51% is not enough to govern because you don't have legitimacy. In a way, many people within the AKP party understand that they are in the same situation. Why? Because there is a problem of being legitimized in a region in which Islamism can be a problem by a secularist state and a secularist establishment. So international observers, most of the time, when they read the situation, you know, the reaction that took place last year because of the military memorandum, and this year with what is called the judiciary coup, has been most of the time that this is a residue of secularist authoritarianism that doesn't want to yield to a democratic process. In other words, we are treating Turkey in this moment like any Spain or Czech Republic during the post-authoritarian, post-communist transition to democratic politics. Okay? Let me say right away, I consider Turkey, I'm anything but a cultural determinist a la Huntington, quite the opposite. But there is no question that around Turkey there is not Austria or Germany or France. That means that the culture of the region can have an influence, and has a region and an influence in the moment in which you open up politics. You create a democratic arena, like it happens after World War II. At that point, necessarily you have two major points. Religion, at that point, could become an organizing political factor. Okay? Yes, the constitutions keep pushing that back, but that comes back all the times. Second, the specific religion-state relationship dominant in the region would also become part of Turkish politics. The forced westernization carrying out during the Jacobin years of the Republic had in a way extracted culturally Turkey from the region. Democratic politics brought back the region to Turkey. Thus we have today a new structural element in Turkish politics, which is a different way of saying what Hakan has already said. It is even when this regional cultural factor does not clash directly with the secular and west-leaning character of Kemalist Turkey, a special political sensitivity persists that make that regionalism continue to be one of the factors relevant in the evolution of Turkish politics. And this is what we have witnessed last year and this year. Let me go back a moment, because I have to build this a little bit to explain where my profession, the European Union, comes in the picture here. Due to demographic changes, means a change in the composition between rural and urban population, religion as organizing political factors became very, very relevant in the mid-90s. 1995 is where Refah Partisi becomes the first party in the Grand National Assembly. Let me say, there is, especially in the literature in Turkey, there is very much a separation between 95 and 2002 as being a separate phenomenon. Not, in my view, they are related because of this democratic factor. And what is the importance already of 1995 is explained by anthropologist Jenny White, among other people. The growth of political Islam and its access to power demotivated much of the rebellious and anti-system sentiments that were present in the Islamist movement. In other words, for all its sectarianism, Welfare Party's electoral success in the mid-1990s moved Turkey towards a more complete institutionalization of its political life. However, this was so sure, and it was an important, in my view, an important sign of the country's political modernization, but clearly it clashed right away because of, especially of Erbakan sectarianism. It clashed with the peculiar secular political history of Republican Turkey. Turkey's political system was growing at this point, polarized around two only positions, two positions that were competing with one another in a game that was absolutely zero-sum, means one or the other. They could not stay on the same ground. The inevitable resignation of Erbakan and the subsequent banning of his party brought the evolution of Turkish democracy to a dangerous impasse. By 1997, Turkey's political evolution had reached a crossroads. A better representative democracy tended to go towards Islamist policies, while the consolidation of secular institutions and policies seemed possible only in the context of an anti-democratic authoritarian evolution of those institutions and policies. Now, that dangerous impasse was overcome when the system came to stand on 3 legs instead of 2. When the parties that succeeded the Banner Welfare Party rapidly moved to embrace European policies and values and to themselves advocate the political and institutional reforms, the Union depended on Turkey. Such an evolution was very quick, very fast, and it came under the pressure of political survival, but immediately proved an extremely successful political recipe. Former Swedish ambassador to Turkey, Andis Mora, just published a few days ago a book about her experience in Turkey during those years, where she stresses the centrality of the European Union issue in the 2002 elections campaign, and especially the EU as core element of the AKP image. It was a thorough transformation from Islamist identity into a European modernizer identity. In 2002, the progressive offspring of the movement, you know that the AKP will gather more than 34% of the vote. And for the first time, we have a split within the Islamic movement. That means that the people find in the political menu 2 possibilities. Are you a real Islamist? You had your party in this case, but that went down to 2.4%. It tells you a lot about the transformation of politics in Turkey. The interesting thing is also that the AKP success was not just a protest vote. It will last. By 2 years later, a general municipal election will be 42%, and of course, last year election 47%. And this is the most important thing. To the AKP, let me elaborate a moment on this. To the AKP, the EU offered a new normative, political, and cultural context, a real transformative possibility. It was attractive to a broader sector of the Turkish public and something the secularists could not object to. Progress made towards the accession to the Union was the most important element in creating, in affording the AKP party with the necessary credential as westernizer and modernizer. And let me point out that a great part of the illegitimacy of Erbakan in the 90s had been not so much introducing pieces of Sharia as much as anti-Western, anti-European stance. To the secularists, strong ties with Europe offer a guarantee that they could allow the otherwise non-credible AKP leadership to stay in power. In brief, the EU offered a common container in which both sides could coexist. And the lessons here seems to be that due to the specific feature of Turkish politics, that means including the regional factor I mentioned before, a party of Islamist background could be allowed to stay in power only when it placed itself within the broadly accepted European framework. And let me remind you that the cohabitation works smoothly to, yes, there is, all this discussion about a couple of generals in succession who wanted to make coup. That's not old habit, but didn't happen. Okay, cohabitation work, and I would say there is no better element in proving that the cohabitation worked than the Turkish military consenting in those years to progressive limitation to its institutionalized control over the political and cultural life of the country. There were, not everybody was in agreement among the military, but there is most of the military end up accepting the identification of Europe with modernization. modernization in turn being a central tenet of Atatürkism, and therefore a goal the military felt strongly committed to. Thus, for instance, with the AKP in government since only a few months, the then deputy and now chief of staff, General Buchanan, explicitly rejected the contention that the armed forces could be opposed to the European Union by explaining that, and I'm quoting him, the European Union is a geopolitical and geostrategic necessity for the goal of modernization, which Mustafa Kemal Atatürk revealed to Turkish society. Moreover, in a context in which he recognized the visible presence of the Union as an anchor and guarantee that the country stayed a secular course, the then Chief of Staff, General Hosgok, indicated a willingness of the armed forces to radically reconsider their political role in the country's life. Military intervention should not be looked upon as panaceas for the ills Turkey faces. This is what he declared in August 2003. In brief, Europe was a condition for that cohabitation, not an optional element of Turkish foreign policy, but an indispensable component of domestic politics. However, that also carries the implication that if that external framework and anchor weakens, the country goes back to its own polarized itself, possibly back to the 1997 political impasse. Which is like to say that a three-legged stool cannot stand if one takes away one leg. Some, of course, think that there was a difference between Özgök, the top general until 2006, and Buchanan. No, I just mentioned Buchanan. I think the situation is much more complex. The EU management, or if you wish, mismanagement of the Cyprus issue in 2004 was a crucial factor. He had a badly erosive impact on Turkish-EU relations, and especially on the credibility of the Union before the Turkish public. A 180-degree change in the position by Ankara on the reunification issue did not pay it off, and instead exposed the AKP party domestically, with EU policy on the issue totally in the hands of the Republic of Cyprus at this point. Now reunification was becoming even more difficult. And finally, as a member of the European Union, the Republic of Cyprus now could link Turkey's accession process to the solution it wanted to give to the reunification issue. Most importantly, the gradual disappearance of the EU beyond the horizon let Turkish politics slip back to the two-variable, polarized system that had characterized the politics in the 90s. Let me come very quickly to a conclusion here, because in fact we have plenty of evidence that the role of the European Union as a common container is still there, still desirable, and still looked for by the different actors domestically. Turkish business community absolutely wants the European Union be part of the panorama in front of itself. Months ago, Newsweek magazine asked Ali Koç and other top Turkish CEOs, why was Turkey, with its spectacular economic performance, still devoting so much energy to join the European Union? The response: it's no secret that growth is in the east, around Turkey and to the east of Turkey. We have all the ingredients that could allow us to become the leaders of this region. But at the same time, transparency, trust, comfort, and stability, these are elements contributing to wealth in Western countries. To be like that, you have to implement rules of transparency, human rights, and fair competition. The acquis communautaire, of course, that come with membership of accession process to the European Union. The importance to the business community of the European Union, in other words, is credibility of the country, and that brings with it foreign direct investments, which is indispensable. Politically, The expectation to go back, to put back on track a cohabitation is predicated solely on the European Union. To those on the AKP that they understand that you cannot rely solely on procedural electoral politics, the EU still is essential for legitimation. Shortly before the election a year ago, Newsweek's editor Farid Zakari asked candidate Gül the predictable question if the party was going to introduce Islamic law, that is Sharia. Gül immediately took shelter under the EU umbrella. We are harmonizing every piece of legislation with the European Union. Is that Sharia? He was irritated, but it was the European Union that he could use. Paradoxically, when you have the AKP party reaching 47%, the Turkish military may need Europe even more than the AKP. After the election, one of the most senior officers, General Erguvenç, was asked by a European newspaper what he thought of the AKP government's intention to rewrite the 1982 constitution, originally written under military regime. The response: we need a new constitution. The old one is not suitable to today's Turkey. He was asked again what about that meant the possible elimination of the power of the military. Yes, he replied, because it will be a final European constitution devised for the accession to the Union, and this for Turkey is a very important goal. I know very well Erguvenç is considered very much on the liberal side, but there are declarations made at that point also by much more conservative members of the armed forces. Most significantly, while lamenting recently the lack of checks and balances that could protect the rights of all in Turkey, pious and secular, Turks and Kurds, President Gül used the same concept used by General Özgök in 2003 when he said that military intervention cannot be the panacea for all the ills Turkey faces. Gül said in this February, EU membership could offer a panacea for Turkey's ills. Let me, towards conclusion here, we have important literature today that clarifies how a strong dependence on an external framework changes the equation among domestic actors, allows to polarize actors to find common ground rather than clash. The literature has explored how membership in international organizations facilitates political transformations. Specifically regarding the Muslim world, two big scholars, important scholars in this country, Stepan and Robertson, have indicated the existence of a commitment to democratic principles for Muslim countries that participate in the British Commonwealth, and the lack of that commitment for those participating in the Arab League means the kind of external framework to which you participate is extremely important. In the latter case, in the case of the Arab League, of course, there is a much bigger problem of democratic deficit. What do we do if this external framework weakens, like I've been illustrating this is the case of Turkey today? Well, hiding behind the absolute value of democratic process may absolve us from further responsibility, but it does not solve the problem. The feeling of political isolation is probably the bigger problem we face now in Turkey. The EU is vital here, even though the EU is itself going through a major crisis, and I don't know how much it can help in the situation. What about the US? US is also very important, but there is a major crisis that started in 2003 because, of course, the war in Iraq. The only solution we have to this problem is to bring back some form of external participation, and in this case, of course, what the Europeans can do of assuring Turkey against his feeling of isolationism, and what this country can do is extremely important. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mario. Good. Well, we have up to an hour for discussion and exchange. I'd ask those of you who wish to intervene to wait until we get a microphone to you, and please identify yourself and give any affiliation that you have. Who would like to lead off?
Are there two? Okay.
If I missed a hand, surely we've not answered all questions and issues. Yes. Yep.
Somebody else
Yep.
has
Yep.
to ask
Yes.
a question.
Do you?
Dr. Yavuz, this is for you.
Identify yourself, please, Jim.
Güler Köknar, Turkish Cultural Foundation, but this is a personal question. I'm not representing the organization here today. How do you interpret the comment, which may not be very well thought out, or I don't know the context in which it was made, but Prime Minister Erdogan said, in response to the decision by the European Court of Human Rights with respect to the headscarf issue, that he believed that this was not of the court to decide, that this was a question better answered by ulema. It seems to me that this is a very important statement in the context of how he conceptualizes, I think, the role of Islam and who calls the shots in the system.
Well, I think there is something interesting here, that there are two different competing and conflicting understanding of Europeanization of Turkey. One understanding is by secular establishment and secular sector of the society. They mean Europeanization, Turkey joining European Union, becoming part of Europe, and public reason prevails in the debate and discussion. Not revelation, but reason is expected to provide a ground for debate and discussion. And this is very much what Europe is also all about. It is not about the issues are not determined by revelation, but by public reason. The Spain, as the Catholic country, as you know, passed a same-sex marriage, even though the cardinals and Pope, they were very angry, but the Spanish Parliament went and voted for it. And then you have also second understanding of Europeanization in Turkey. That is the understanding of Prime Minister Erdogan. They think that the Turkey should become a cream within a coffee rather than sugar inside the coffee. That they think that Turkish membership should transform European Union as well. That there should be some kind of compromise between reason and revelation-based civilization, that is Islam. That the Prime Minister is also, as you know, head of this UN project of dialogue of civilizations that the Turkey wants to lead. So you have some contradictions here. That Turkey wants to join the European Union, and I agree with Massimo that the AKP sees European Union both as a project because it didn't have a project, second, a source of legitimacy to overcome both domestic and international criticism of the policies of the party. But there is not full internalization of the European values. But I think this is a process. The Islamic movement, as Massimo said, Erbakan, who was the teacher of Erdogan, they were very anti-European Union. But today, that process went on, and today you have a very different attitude and position. Today, they want to be in Europe, but not as a sugar, but a cream, to mix and transform the Europe as well. I think this is a change, and this change, I think, is going on. But I think that comment of Prime Minister indicates that it demonstrates the lack of full internalization of the Europeanization. But there is one issue I want to add what Massimo said. The Turkish generals and Turkish secular establishment in 2001 agreed for European Union project, that they were also ready to redefine the state nation state as long as there is a membership commitment by the European Union. They want this transformation to take place within the European Union project. But in 2004, European Union told Turkey that regardless whatever you do, we cannot guarantee the full membership in the end. It became an open-ended project. So then the secular establishment and generals, they got so worried and scared that now you transform the state, but we don't know what is going to emerge. Is Turkey going to become Pakistan or Iraq or what? Because the Iran. So I think you need to understand also that the European Union, unfortunately, since 2004, especially after the election of Sarkozy, played a very negative role. And I think this attitude, one of the main reasons why the secular establishment became so skeptical of the European Union, and European Union today lost the credibility in the country because of the statements by Merkel and Sarkozy, and then the European public is more pro-Turkish membership under the AKP governance because of this whole Islamism of the public sphere. The European public today, if there is going to be a referendum, there is going to be a less support for Turkish membership today than I would say 6-7 years ago, according to European surveys.
Interesting. Yes, lady just here. Matt, just here.
Thank you. Ahu Öztürk from CNN Türk and Milliyet. Maybe a follow-up on where Mr. Yavuz left, but to Mr. Mario Zucconi. Could you give us a sense of what the European Union currently is trying to do in terms of, rather than comforting the secular establishment, saying, don't worry about it, we are here, we're going to be with you, let the AKP pursue the reforms, sort of creating a comforting zone for them. They are siding with the AKP and expressing full support against the closure case, whereas we don't see that kind of an open expression for the DTP closure case, for example. Could you clarify what really European Union is trying to do, and what should it be doing in a circumstance like this? Maybe defining a timetable for membership, for example, would solve a lot of the problems. But do you see the Commission doing such a thing?
No, I don't, which is very bad. The European Union has been since at least 2005 in a very big crisis of itself. Okay, confusion about enlargement, poor leadership. No problem saying that. Because of history, Europe in history has defined itself, fortunately because it was Turkey. There is a book about this, okay, by Newman, about definition of Europe by the other, and the other has been Turkey in most of the European Union. What I'm saying, I don't want to bring you back very far back in history. It's easy to, politically, to discard Turkey and to use Turkey as the expendable element. So when we started to have this crisis in 2004, 2005, immediately after, immediately after the Big Bang enlargement to 10 more countries in May 2004, crisis called enlargement fatigue. Means people didn't understand. They thought a lot of responsibility. It was a moment of poor economic performance for Europe. So, the only thing people connected was this maybe is costly. It turned out to be an incredible success story. But you didn't have a politician going in front of on television and say to the public, this is an incredible historical achievement, like the United States after World War II with Germany and Japan. So there is still a sense in Europe that, what is enlargement, okay? It's very much leadership-driven. Of course, you have Sarkozy and Merkel in power who played for their election, the card, anti-immigrant, anti-enlargement, etc. So it is a moment of great confusion, and again, Turkey is the first expendable element in all this. Go to the Commission, they understand very well the importance of Turkey today, and they are desperate, okay? Because they understand the importance of Turkey in this very moment, because Turkey is it's not only because it's growing much more at a faster speed economically than the rest of Europe, it is also indispensable as a route for oil and gas, and for a number of reasons. Because the main problem we have today, it is the relationship with the Muslim world, and there Turkey is a bridge, okay? So Turkey is divided. Even in the European capitals, many people understand that this is extremely important. I've been in meetings after meetings discussing the Cyprus issue, where I think, Europe really dropped completely its credibility with the Turkish public, and instead, Verheugen, the Commissioner for Enlargement, said in 2004, I feel cheated by the Republic of Cyprus. It's not me saying that, Europe was cheated. Okay? This is the... Right, what's going to happen? There is no ability to solve from Brussels the Cyprus issue. Fortunately, I have the impression that the Cypriots are solving themselves the problem now. In other words, making this not a big burden for the problem of bringing Turkey into the European Union. Again, let's put together two pieces here. On one side, there is the people who can think strategically. They understand the absolutely indispensability to Europe, Turkey, but they were unable to handle politically the problem because of the Cyprus issue. Cyprus issue, what is the Cyprus issue? It is a little issue on which there was no political will, and that was very comfortable to a lot of people. People, in other words, big capitals who didn't want to expose themselves as being anti-Turkish, found that very comfortable having Greek Cypriots, okay, making, a roadblock to the accession of Turkey. Are we going out of the situation? Certainly the Cypriots solve this problem, but the situation with Turkey will start to move again. We have a huge problem right now, lots of confusion in Brussels itself. There is a major problem, which is the election of this new position that we have, the president of the union, and we don't know who it's going to be, and there is a need for more institutional reforms. Turkey is absolutely the litmus test, because of the importance of this country, the litmus test of a Europe that starts to move again like it did, in the years up to 2004, when this great historical achievement of enlarging to 10 new countries, and especially to countries of the former communist part of Europe.
Can I add something? I agree with Mario. There's one issue. Even though European elite bureaucracy and business community are in favor of Turkish membership, but the public is very much against. And public opinion in Europe is now more anti-Turkish than, I would say, a decade ago. And then some countries, they want to have a referendum for the future enlargement of the Union. So there is a major challenge. Another issue, the public image of Turkey is somewhat reduced to the image of Islam, especially after the bombing in London, in Madrid, and the riots in Paris. Very much, I think Turkey now also, in the media, you have a party in Turkey claimed by outsiders and some Turks inside being the pro-Islamic party. That also did not help the public image of Turkey. I think this is something very important. But since Europe is not given a date, calendar to Turkey, I think Turkey needs to be extremely cautious in terms of undermining nation state in the country. Otherwise, Turkey cannot control. The transformation may become the collapse of the state. that we see in the region what happens. I think this is the major fear of the establishment in Turkey. If there is no date in the end, would the transformation of Turkey become the collapse of the state? Because in Turkey, the political culture is not based on individual, it is based on communities and city-based solidarity networks. So this is a community, again, this is a country built and still divided by different religious, ethnic, regional communities. If state collapses, that would really create a major problem for the country. So I think we need to understand why this new thinking on the part of the security establishment, by the military especially, why Turkey should slow down this transformation of the state without the membership.
Let me make a couple of comments about the European Union. I think the European Union, in its very complicated negotiating process, which is sort of a one-sided negotiation called accession, has never set a date for a member. The date is a result of completing all of these chapters, and the chapters seem to get more complicated and longer with each accession. So it would help to be closing certain chapters. They're not moving very rapidly on that right now, and as Mario says, there is a lack of will. But another thing that people have to keep in mind is the European Union is not a unitary actor. You have a parliament, you have a court of justice, you have a commission, and you have the Council of Europe, which is the heads of government meeting, any one of which can veto a major decision under the current treaty structure. So it requires a lot of things coming together to produce an EU decision. And accession is the thing that has been the primary instrument of EU reform and foreign policy, with them having taken in a large number of countries and, in a sense, having indigestion in absorbing these countries at present. Accession is the hardest thing they could do. So it's a pretty high fence to ride at for any country, and a country as different from the majority of the EU members as Turkey. It makes it a big complication. Let me ask Hakan a question. You said there were a series of groups that came together in a coalition to form the AK party. Now, in this constitutional crisis that we currently face, are any of these groups likely to find alternatives to split off, or will there be factional losses of support for the party as it confronts this crisis with the Constitutional Court? And how do you see the party's cohesion and future?
Well, I think the coalition will remain there, and the Constitutional Court, even if it bans Justice and Development Party, which is very likely given its constitutional function, I do not expect, I expect another party to be formed, and this coalition will be there as well. I don't expect a major crisis in the country. I think the major challenge for Turkey is really how can Turkey transform its nation-state ideology. It is only possible within the European Union membership framework. Serbia is going to join EU before Turkey. No one questions Europeanness of Serbia or Albania, but they question Turkey constantly, and no one says we should have a referendum over Serbia, but they want to have referendum over Turkey. So, and then the Merkel and Sarkozy openly proposes a special relationship. So I think the credibility of Europe is really an issue in Turkey. Coalition will be there, but again, I think there is going to be some kind of compromise, modus vivendi, between different groups in the country. But I think we may not see the similar speed of transformation or reform without clear EU commitment to Turkish membership.
Well, thank you. There's a question here. Mara, did you have a point?
No, I wanted to point out that is exactly. I mean, every time there was a specific date, that was a catalyst. It was 1999, already before AKP, and it was 2004. 2004, you go to 2005, foreign direct investment in Turkey is half the value of the 50 years before he went. And in 2006, it is twice 2005. Immediately you see the consequence of this, okay? There is no question economically Turkey is highly integrated with Europe, uses the same regulation. It is this political problem which is a major problem.
I just wanted to ask, what
Can you
is
identify
the...
yourself, please?
Yeah, Nuh Yilmaz, Star Newspaper. I just have a question about the thesis of the collapse of state. I mean, I couldn't quite get what is the relationship between the collapse of state and European Union and AKP closure case. I mean...
I think it's not as much collapse of state as reform of state, but Professor Yavuz.
By collapse of state, what I mean is that not Turkey becoming Afghanistan, or it is not becoming Iraq, but in Turkey today, the state defines itself above society, and state tries to create a neutral zone outside different ethnic, religious communities. Turkey is made of not individuals, but this is a communitarian country, that there are communities. And look at in the case of Iraq, this is the reality of the Middle East, that the Cemaatler toplumu, or it is a confessional entities, because of the neighborhood loyalties, regional loyalties, religious, the Sufi group loyalties. So when the state gives up and allows the penetration of these different communities into the state institutions, it is going to lose its legitimacy. Who's going to respect the police force if it is under the hegemony of one community? Or who's going to respect the Ministry of Education if it is controlled by the one group? In other words, this is what I mean. Collapse of state is the collapse of its legitimacy. And Turkey, I think, should and find a way of transforming the state to allow more social groups to express themselves. But I think you need to have some external security, and that was the European Union, European Court on the Human Rights. But now, if that is not going to be there, so what this issue is here, Turkey is asked to create institutions with the assumption that there are individuals in Turkey. When you create that institutional opening, not the individuals but the jamaats, the communities, are going to take the advantage. And then Turkey is going to turn into some form of Balkanization or Lebanization. I think that this is a real fear in the country. And this is not only an imagined fear, but this is a real problem today, some of the issues and discussions we confront in the country.
I have a question to Hakan. If the Constitutional Court bans the AK party and bans its leaders from participating in the political process after that, there is some expectation that the party will reconstitute itself, may even gain in some future election more strength. My question is there a possibility that a constitution could be adopted at that point that would change the role of the Constitutional Court, which you describe yourself as the last bulwark of the secular forces?
I think that, as you know, Gunther, that Turkey as a divided society, for divided societies you need to have a different form of governance, that you need to provide some veto power to weak group or the minority. Here we are talking about the secular sector of the society. So I think that before we give up the constitutional, if there is going to be a constitutional change, it should take this into an account and provide some veto power to minority, here the ideological minority in the country. And I do think that the Justice and Development Party doesn't necessarily want to change the constitution, even though they talked, but what we see, the issue was the headscarf issue. Now no one is discussing the constitutional change in the country. If party is closed, I think it will reconstitute itself under different leadership. Erdogan emerged as a leader because Constitutional Court banned Erbakan. In other words, that political space was opened and created by the Constitutional Court for Erdogan and Gül. I would say that you would see the new generation will emerge. Will it, in each case, I'm not defending what the Constitutional Court did, but in each banning of the Islamic Party, the Islamic groups and parties became more moderate. They became more democratic, more civil society oriented. So rather than using the coups, I think the military coup is not a possibility in Turkey under any conditions. I think the generals, they learned a good lesson in the last coup. But the Constitutional Court, or the legal ways of domesticating, legal ways of moderating the groups are the only way, and so far it is working. And I really think that we should understand why the Constitutional Court and security establishment in Turkey is acting the way they are, because, again, of the other cases around Turkey are, look at Georgia, look at Iraq. These are Turkey's neighbors. And on the Cyprus issue, Turkey did whatever is asked by the European Union, but the European Union did not try to reward the Justice and Development Party on this issue. So I think Turkey will muddle through this conflict. I think there might be some excesses here and there, but I really think that the Constitutional Court plays a very positive role. If you don't have the court, what they are doing now, you would have the military coup. Which one would you prefer? I would say the court, from my perspective, the court, rather than having the generals running the show.
Up here.
Thank you. Kate Nahapetian with the Armenian National Committee of America. I had a question about EU membership and criteria. There's still a lot of problems with the treatment of minorities in Turkey, and several criteria haven't been met. And if you could talk about how the constitutional crisis is affecting the reforms that need to be made. For instance, Article 301, there's been a lot of pressure to change that law. There were amendments, but they were pretty much cosmetic, not meaningful. And minority schools are restricted. You have to have an ethnic Turk as a deputy principal in a school. There's certain letters, Kurdish letters, that are banned. It's criminal to use them. And if you could talk about, other problems that minorities have and what progress has been made.
Well, I think Turkey is doing very well in terms of the treatment of minorities, even though there were periods the treatments were not very good. I tend to agree with you. But today, I think Turkey is with the European Union. Most of the minorities in Turkey, the Jewish minority, Armenian minority, Greek Orthodox minority, they all voted for the governing party. And even Patriarch openly came and expressed his full support for the Prime Minister. But I don't think, we don't hear these, there are issues again, but I think situation is much, much better in Turkey today if you compare with other countries around Turkey where the mosques are banned. And as you know, you very well, 1 million people are refugees in some other parts of the region. And I think Turkey is doing much better. And European Union in the last report they were very supportive of the government, of the legal changes they made and they are implementing. I don't think it is the major issue from the European perspective. Especially, this government did excellent job on the religious minorities in the country.
Yeah, if I can add, what I consider the wrong attitude of the European Union is to stand like the gentleman at the door and check the ticket, if you have the right ticket to come into the room. More important than that is to look at the politics of a country and to understand if the country is capable of changing or not. Change, we know, is really, what we have seen in the experience of many countries, but especially with Turkey, it is a case of takes two to tango. European Union is very much part of the process. The credibility of the European Union, the transformative power of the European Union is all there. But, they have to, as Hakan was saying, the people in the country have to have a clear perspective that they are wanted, that the European Union is going to accept them. Now, when you have cases like the Cyprus problem, and one problem after the other, double standards here and there about accession of the European Union, leadership like Merkel and Sarkozy, you have a major problem. And so, again, I would not be concerned about Article 301. You're right, cosmetic, attempt at changing something. Turkey is a country that has revolutionized itself because of this interest of being part of the European Union. That means they can change anything. So again, it depends on the other side. If you are visible, credible, you are there. It's a bad moment in this respect. Mm-hmm. And I remember already years ago somebody on the street telling me, or maybe the usual taxi driver from the airport in Istanbul, saying, we are never going to be members of the European Union, but this is very good for us, the transformation. That means a degree of internalization of this process, which is very, very important. So the country is willing to change, and is willing to change if there is a process in which the other side, stretches out the hand.
Do you see a problem with the treatment of minorities in Turkey at all?
Oh, sure. There is plenty of problems. It's not the only problem. There is so many problems, honor killing and everything. But the point is that is the reasons why countries change. The transformation of Eastern Europe, whatever is the transformation, the problems we are having with Bulgaria and Romania in this moment. But, deep transformation in many, many countries came about because of the desire of being part of the European Union and not for structural funds. It's because being part of the European Union creates that credibility, you being part of the level of globalization that brings with it foreign direct investment, being part of the big world. For Turkey is extremely, extremely important. AKP party has been extremely important in this respect. It's the party that understood that the European Union, the relationship with the European Union, was a shortcut to globalization. You introduced the rule. Because of what Hakan was saying, this is a country that for historical reasons doesn't have any complex post-colonial culture, and so it can introduce since the early 19th century has been importing legislation from Europe, proudly so. And so it can do that. And with that comes today the necessity of being at a certain level of commerce, of interaction, economic interaction in the world. European Union is a shortcut because you can say, because there is no opposition or limited opposition to the European Union, there is another mechanism. You can tell your people you are paying a sacrifice because you want to go into the European Union, and people are willing to pay a sacrifice.
Eleonora?
Thank you. Eleonora Siliprendi, Wilson Center. So,
From what I understood, there are many controversial elements from the point of view, let's say, of the study of democracy. I would like to take it from there and see at what point we can arrive. So basically, we saw that there is an authoritarian tradition, and the result is probably a sort of guardian state that is self-referential to a certain degree. The second aspect is that the judiciary is in part there to grant the state. The third aspect, we mentioned Europe as a possible other guardian or at least grantor of the situation. We don't want the state to collapse, right? But the thing that I found extremely interesting in the end was the mention of civil society. What's wrong with this?
Hold it a little lower.
Okay, it didn't work. The mention of civil society and the communitarian structure or the fabric of civil society. So I come quickly to my question to both speakers. I would like to understand how we can imagine a transformation of a society that is based on the concept of community to a society that is based on the concept of individual, and why they should choose to become based on the concept of individual, given the fact that we don't have, for example, a European model that is based on the development of a bourgeoisie that finally arrived to the French Revolution. I made it very quickly. So my question is this: how can you imagine this fundamental step to the individual, let's say?
How to create an individual, or
no, the concept of individual as the base of democracy, because it seems to be let's say the overlapping consensus seems to be there. If that is not there, there is no way to arrive to the concept of democracy. Thank you.
Well, I think that in order to have a democracy, you need to have a number of conditions. Democracy cannot grow in everywhere. We see what happened in Iraq. People understood democracy as elections, and political parties formed around sectarian and ethnic groups. And we know what is going on in Afghanistan. And so what you need to have condition. One of the conditions is the civic culture, that you need to have a sense of individual, this difference, being different, being dissent, a culture of dissent. You need to have the rule of law, the court, constitutional court. You need to have the legal system. You need to have a degree of national integration to have a democracy. Otherwise, you will have the mess in Iraq. This is how the United States tried to do it. You see, it collapsed totally. And so you need to have also socioeconomic conditions, the literacy rate, the education, a middle class. Then you can have democracy. And in Turkey, some of these conditions are there, it is evolving, but some of the conditions are not there yet. Therefore, Turkish democracy is not going to look like the Jeffersonian democracy or British democracy. It will reflect socio-political conditions of Turkey. Again, not only a state has authoritarian culture, Turkish society is also authoritarian with its own culture, communitarian, the honor killing, or the confessional networks, all these things. So I think we need to be tolerant, and we need to see that it will take some time for Turkey. And I think the EU, I agree with Mario, played an incredible role. It can still play a major agent of change in Turkey if it becomes credible. That means giving Turkey a date and not debating about special relationship or this and that, the referendum. And I really think that we should, when we criticize the Turkish state, culture, and ideology, we should also look at the Turkish society. It is not like the British society. It is not like even Salt Lake City, where I come from, in terms of room for diversity. Turkey is, there are, what is the leading Turkish sociologist, Sherif Mardin, called mahalle baskısı, or the pressure of the neighborhood. That you have this societal, communitarian pressure which doesn't allow room for individual. Therefore, the state has to be above all these societal tension. I think this is what the Kemalist state tried to achieve. It is not 100% successful, but I would say it succeeded at least 70-80%.
Yes. Is there another question? The lady here.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mindy Reiser.
It's on.
My name is Mindy Reiser. I'm with the United Nations Association of the National Capital Area. A question about Turkish foreign policy. It's played a role as a kind of bridge or link, certainly, to Israel in the Muslim world. And I'm wondering how you see that continuing. Obviously, there are internal dynamics and the strengthening of certainly Islamic tradition with its own proclivities and tendencies. So how does this evolve, and what kind of public opinion do we have in Turkey with regard to Turkish role vis-à-vis Israel?
Well, Turkish foreign policy is an extension of Turkey's westernization project. That Turkish foreign policy is derived from what the Kemalist system wanted to do, create a European nation state. Therefore, Turkish foreign policy has always been pro-European. This is number one factor. Second, the notion of state, the state interest above factional interest of the religious group or this group or that group. So certainly there are times under which ethnic solidarity and religious solidarity plays a role in Turkish foreign policy. I would say one of them was Cyprus Issue because of the Turkish minority, but there are also state interests there too. Second, the Bulgarian Turks, and again there were very obvious reasons. On the Bosnian case, again, Turkey was very pro-Bosnian because of the Ottoman legacy, because of the large number of Bosnian community who live in Turkey in high positions. But Turkish foreign policy hardly, I would say, led by Islamic concerns. There are, at the societal level, yes, demonstrations, this or that. And Turkey was the first Muslim country to recognize the State of Israel. It is under the current government, what I understand, I heard last night, that the Israeli planes flew from Konya region in Turkey and bombed the Syrian targets. And I think there is a lip service Turkey pays to Islamic issues, but it never becomes concrete. Even Turkey now controls the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Conferences, a Turk, but the current government wanted to make it a big deal, and it is going to play this role and that role, but not much. In other words, Turkish foreign policy is governed by the project of the Kemalist project. Second, the interest of the state, still, I would say, today. It is not led by these religious motives.
Anything to add there?
Yeah. I would like to add that there is a second dimension to Turkish foreign policy, which is Turkey's potential foreign policy, and in part actual foreign policy, which is Europe has in this moment 20 million Muslims observed. The United States has a major problem with the Muslim world, and Turkey is a Western country, Muslim at the same time, and is an incredible bridge. This is a major element. Turkey to this country, and they are very aware of this in Turkey, because of this problem, the problem of the United States with the Muslim world, especially after 9/11, comes into a very precise concept, which is the Turkish model. In other words, the suggestion to other Muslim countries that there is a good way of being Muslim, which is politically moderate and non-terrorist. Something nobody likes that in Turkey, but it is there, and it is a very powerful element in the Arab countries and in the Muslim world. Okay, so it is not a secondary thing. Another element, potential and actual, of Turkey, it is Central Asia. Central Asia is becoming a major geostrategic area in international affairs, and they look at Turkey because of the linguistic affiliation, kinship, and because, of course, they look at Turkey as the main industrial power to which they can relate. So with the Central Asia, of course, comes also a role of Turkey as main transit area for oil and gas. So here is not a problem of defining what is, the present foreign policy of Turkey. It is the geography of Turkey that suggests an incredible possibility of an incredible role that Turkey can play in the world as it develops, especially between, with a divide that we have culturally between Western world and Muslim world.
I am Ali Aslan, a Washington correspondent for Zaman newspaper. Nowadays I'm reading this little booklet. It's called The Anti-Coup, and it's by Albert Einstein Institution. And I'm reading it not because I'm crazy, because there is clear and present danger of a coup in Turkey. And the reason I'm saying this is that there is an ongoing investigation led by a prosecutor in which they are investigating an illegal organization called Ergenekon, which is trying to undermine Turkish constitution by crafting military coups. And they are into assassination business and social public unrest business. So I just wanted to say this because I don't agree your assessment that coups in Turkey are over. And by the way, in 2003 and 2004, when we had the most successful reforms in the country, again, the information we get from the press and also which is proven by the police that there was an attempted coup in Turkey in 2003. And this we understand from memoirs of a very high-level Turkish military leader who is now retired. So the question is this. This question is to Hakan Yavuz. If I'm not wrong, you said the establishment, especially the security establishment in Turkey, the state establishment in Turkey, thinks Turkey should slow down transformation or reforms without a clear end to the EU process, without a clear commitment from EU that Turkey will be an EU member. And in the beginning of your presentation, you also said Turkish military has led reformation efforts in the Ottoman era, late Ottoman era, early Republican era. So the question is this. In late Ottoman era, we didn't have EU membership prospects, right? What was the reason Turkish military then acting pro-reform, and now they are, or the establishment, not only the military, which includes the bureaucrats and the state establishment. Why are they hesitant to really produce an independent way of reform in Turkey, independent of EU membership? Why are they not ready? I'm repeating your argument. Why are they ready to really come up with an independent reform project in Turkey?
Well, I think in Turkey, I don't think the coups are possibility. There might be a debate here and there in the coffee shops or chit chat between the generals, but to implement in Turkish military, there is a god in the center of the Turkish military. That god is the chief of staff. Turkish military is very much built institutionally around the power of the chief of staff. Therefore, if chief of staff is against a coup, it is less likely. It is almost impossible to have a successful coup. So I would say there were some debate among the generals. Well, so what? there were some debate around the people, but I don't think there is a consensus in the country for a military coup among the generals or among even the sector of the civil society as well. I think the military coups are over. Maybe talk is not over, yes, but the possibility of an actual successful military coup is over. In Turkey, you have, since 2002, Turkey had 4 major court cases, very publicly debated by the media, some sector of the media. One was the chancellor of the one university's court case. You might all read, and even they put the chancellor into jail for a while, but the court in the end come to the conclusion that there was nothing. Second is something called the Şemdinli davası. Again, it made a huge deal, but in the end nothing emerged. Third was the sauna çetesi, the gang of the sauna. Again, media, some sector of the media made it a big deal. The fourth was the Atalar çetesi. They said, well, this is another gang which tries to lead or shape the military coup in the country, but in the end, nothing came out as well. Now we have another court case called Ergenekon. I think it is just like other 4 court cases. Nothing is there. What Nazlı Ilıcak said, you cannot pull these people together in a same camp. Veli Küçük and Doğu Perinçek and İlhan Selçuk. I think really while we discuss of these Ergenekon court case, what we are seeing is some of the re-ownership of the media, re-ownership of some of the companies are going on. The public attention is one place, but the real issues are on the other hand. I think we need to be clear on this. The Turkish army was the agent of the change in the 19th century. You are right, in the early 20th century as well. The content, the goal of the reform was to enhance the state. This is very clear, for the state, to create a powerful state to take care of the society, but also protect itself from these divisions and create more homogeneous society. This was the goal of Mustafa Kemal. Today, the purpose is to unpack or loosen this state and share the sovereignty with the international institutions. Before they share the sovereignty with the international institutions, they want to see some guarantee that they will be treated equally within these international institutions. And military is today very skeptical, not only the military, but the secular establishment. I am not a military, but a professor here in the United States. I would also do the same thing, to go very slowly and gradually for these reforms if you don't have the membership, because when you open the gates, you may not control later on. Let's do it. Let's do the change, do the transformation, but do it very slowly. And you try first and see, and then back and forth. The Europe rushed to these reforms in the 18th century, 19th century, and we know the cost for the Europe. It took a long time to create the current balance. Turkey is doing this very slowly, gradually, but less human cost than Europe, what Europe went through. I think we need to understand it's a slow process, but the human cost is much lower in Turkey than I would say in Germany.